Right. Hello, everybody. I am Alan Harrington. Today I am with RapidScale, and we're going over kind of what is architecting next and how to actually make it for the future instead of what we've done in the past. So a little bit more about if you're familiar with VCF 5, then this is kind of the next step. If not, then it'll be a little bit of a change. It's very fun. It's very cool technology, and we are excited to present about it. This is kind of geared more towards medium enterprise companies. There is a few sales decks and a few sales slides in here. We'll go ahead and get those out of the way, get started, and kind of go from that. I did notice that there is some other um, classes and other events and sessions right after this. So I want to try and end a little bit early. We'll see what happens so I can do some Q&A a little bit later. If not, then we can reach out. We can go from there. Right. So about me, I am a principal cloud architect with RapidScale. I've been here a little over 5 years. I have a lot of VMware experience, nearly 20 years at this point. I started at 2.52, so forever and ever ago. Quickly got my VCP. I just tallied my last certification, and I now have 23. I've been playing with 10,000 virtual machines back in 2009. That was sort of fun and absolutely crazy back when a host having 32 gigs and 48 gigs of RAM was kind of unheard of. Very, very entertaining. I've done a whole lot of high-level architect work since then and still now. It's fun. I do it here at RapidScale. And then I am an avid like playing with anything with two wheels and doing some exercising. So that's me. I have been here a little over 5 years. Good to go. We are a wrong direction. So these are the people that should attend. Do admins, engineers, cloud architects, or if you're an IT decision maker, we'll kind of go over a bunch of different technologies and shifts and ways we can actually handle it. As long as we're talking about it, there's going to be a lot of discussions about some of the VMware VCSPs, which is the cloud service provider models. We're going to talk about how to bring your own subscription. So in case you're doing some data center exit strategies or anything of that nature, then we can help offload. And we're going to talk about future-proofing DR costs through multi-tenant and some of the private clouds, giving some real-world examples about how we've used VCF to automate and optimize a lot of our existing infrastructure. We are based out of Raleigh. We have multiple worldwide data centers. We are owned by Cox Enterprises, which is pretty cool because honestly, that means we get 100 gig circuits in Cox Communications. So we get free egress and ingress, and that is a very beneficial for the amount of bandwidth that we use everywhere. We are VMware and cloud experts nearly in all clouds. So GCP, Azure, AWS, VMware, VCD. We have very, very prolific and smart people on here. We are designed to improve your business quality of life. Going from there, we have a bunch of, if you run it on-prem, you can run it in our place. We have what's called RapidStack, which is what we've developed for bursting. It's the data center designed around VCF 9, so that's in a box, and we go from there. Private AI, we do healthcare and hosted Epic, so we're qualified for that. And DR as a service, and that is hopefully all the sales I can muster and get out of there. So first is guardrails. But we want to talk about what exactly we're going to do so we don't break what your existing deployment is, and we can keep things up to date and just go down the path of making sure everything works still. Bring your own subscription is a new model that has been enabled by Broadcom and is we're starting to see some traction in that area about your core count and core commitment and being able to do that. Um, Hybrid hosting patterns that actually work. So this is going to be on global load balancing, distributing things, distributed firewall, distributed layer 2 through HCX, et cetera, et cetera. And then adoption paths, greenfield, brownfield, and hybrid. So how exactly is the best way to get to 9.0? There's already been, the lunch seminar was really good. If you all saw that, that was really nice. And then I want to talk a good bit about the VCSP, since that's what we are and that's the model we do. We currently host over 17,000 VMs just for that. We're pretty big scale. That's just our multi-tenant. We've got a few other things. So VCSP at this scale becomes a lot of interesting challenges. And with that comes automation. So automation is a huge key piece of what we do and how we actually make sure that we use declarative functions so that we can stay ahead of the curve, so we don't have any sort of config drift or changes or anything like that. Make sure before you get anything, as with any version software, and I hate to say it, but this is a zero release, right? It is, in my opinion, not a 9.0 release. This is a brand new release. It's the first time it's been under Broadcom. They've done a good job with it, but let's not kid ourselves. With this much changing, we want to make sure that we actually proceed very cautiously. So you want to make sure that you have proper approvals in place, run book changes. We do all this because we're not trying to predict what happens, but we want to go ahead and call out and bind the risk so we can effectively change the blast radius so that we can keep our production zones safe. That's really the best way to do it. A lot of the CPUs have fallen off with 9. So with that being said, and the CPUs falling off, a lot of what we were able to do with 8, we're not going to be able to do on with 9 with the hardware compatibility list. So make absolutely sure that we validate the HCL and that we go from there. The host profiles are kind of taking a back burner finally, which is good because I absolutely abhorred having to put a host in a maintenance mode to change an NTP server. So it is very good that desired states are coming in and you're getting drift alerts. As with any cluster, anything we're doing, make sure that we're doing at least 2+1, N+1 for the capacity. Make sure if we are doing vSAN as a principal storage that you take into consideration multiple failures, so a host failure as well as disk failure. Immutable backups, always do restore, always test on the new environment. What was immutable in one config might not be immutable in the next, so you just want to make sure everything is good. What has been nice about some of the pilot deployments with VCF9 is the fact that we can now only have to use 2 hosts. So 2 hosts, kind of shrinking that down. If you have an existing principal, such as VMFS and Fiber Channel, then you're actually able to start off with a lot lower footprint than we have been in the past. So getting that in and being able to build out a canary cluster so that you can actually get your feet wet and dive into it has been incredibly nice. Bring your own subscription. This one is an acronym that I have learned about recently in the past few months, and I was really unaware of it. And what Broadcom has done is they've now said that you can bring your subscription into other people's environments. So for smaller customers, that might not be that big of a deal. For customers that have like hundreds of cores, thousands and thousands of cores, that you now don't necessarily have to be tied down to one location or to yourself. You could bring that subscription over to our hardware model or to anyone's hardware model, and you're able to run that on their hardware. So you can save a whole lot of cost. And it allows you to do license portability. So you control where it rains. It's not necessarily, think of it as like the control plane from where it's running versus where the data plane is. So that no longer has to sit. The costs stay with you, and you can move the workloads around where you see fit. What is super nice is that means you don't have to double pay for a subscription for movement. That was one things that bit us kind of with VCF 5 and those hard license keys. Yeah, you could, put them into a vCenter that's not necessarily phoning home from usage meter, but that's against the EULA, and that's not something you're supposed to do. Uh, so the co-management, and there's a whole different things, and it allows you to accelerate basically your deployment of the entire VCF stack. So if you are super interested in it, but don't necessarily have the time frame or skills, then you can contract out or help get another company to have the hardware for you so you can burst and play and not have the 90-day limits, things of that nature about when you're actually going through and having to redo a lot of your licensing. So that's super nice. Um, this is still another slide on bring your own subscription. The thing I think that we really want to talk about is the full stack enablement. So doing the bring your own subscription will allow it to burst, and in doing so, you can definitely get what's the best capabilities of both worlds. So as your data center grows older or whatever the case may be, then you can bring your own subscription over to RapidScale or another provider so that you can actually start landing your DR as a service as a target. So some of those old legacy data centers and places like that, you don't necessarily have to continue. You're allowed to migrate those workloads without double dipping into your license cost. That is a fundamental shift about architecting some of your clustering and your VMware environment that we have not been able to do in the past. Some hybrid hosting patterns. So a lot of things we started to, not started to, but we've seen multiple shifts is the hybrid management. And so you guys have your own data centers in the box, and they're located, but you want to do DR as a service elsewhere and still maintain control. So that is a great way to do some licensing cost control. So we're talking about a lot of the hybrid hosting of that model that we've seen work in the past that have been great. So VCF introduces the new identity broker, and that has been awesome. You can cluster it. It is not fully supported to be stretched across cluster sites yet, so be very, very careful with that. That is annoying. I have been told that that should be fixed in 9.1. That is something we want to be kind of aware of when that happens. We don't want to make sure things go too sideways or whatnot, especially when the site goes down and you're not able to log into the rest of your VCF fleet. That is a pretty big no-no. So it's a good design consideration to take care of. NSX Federation with global managers still there, so we're able to do that. There is incredibly very cool new technology out with vCenter 9 that allows you to natively do NSX integration with VPC networking. VPC being virtual private cloud. So within that, you're able to abstract and configure a lot of the NSX settings through the vCenter GUI, which provides people with a lot of familiarity instead of having to go through there in different sites. And so it's sort of it's a very nice middle ground between VMware Cloud Director and NSX. So definitely take advantage of that. Definitely get used to that. And then automation alignment. This has been an absolutely huge one. The ability now where we can export your JSON config and then modify it and import it into the deployment guide and have it rerun has been able to save me days and days of a typo here, a typo there, and the great DNS changes and all of that stuff. It's just been absolutely fundamentally amazing to be able to export and then import your JSON config for your actual VCF deployment. The NSX Advanced Load Balancer is fully called Avi now. Avi does a great job. We can use it as a global load balancer, so you're able to really scatter across your VCF automation instances and get a global footprint and redirect customers as well as your clients about where exactly you want to go and where you want your public sites to be accessible from. So a lot of the great things about that too is sort of funny because you can use Avi to publish and front end VCFA. Doing that will do the same thing we just talked about, right? The global load balancer, you can do the Kubernetes through there. The NSX Federation will help. There is a whole lot of queues and caching that you can do. We're seeing some stretched SQL clusters, right, going across everywhere so that we can stay in sync with your headquarters going on that path. The centralized VCF automation for logs has been absolutely amazing. That is a very good way to handle it. When you actually start to deploy and shift to the global load balancer model instead of just the single site, do things, some of the basics like practice traffic shifts in different regions, go ahead and reduce your DNS TTLs just in case. Make sure that you've got the correct dependency orders and make sure that your success metrics are defined. All right. This is, I think, arguably one of the most curious topics because everybody seems to have sort of a different opinion. And what we are doing is going to be different than what is done or what is needed for a lot of other people. One of the things that we've kind of settled on, or that I've settled on, is using holodeck and absolutely pushing all of my engineers and people to use holodeck over and over and over again so that we have an environment where we're actually able to modify in and go in and run and accept and change and do everything. It is absolutely amazing. I cannot say enough good stuff about holodeck. It does require some beefy host, but the experiences are incredibly worth it. Um, if you do not have holodeck or a host where you're able to actually use holodeck on, the next best thing 100% is sign up for the Broadcom hands-on lab. And of course, follow William. He did a great job just a few moments ago about the other session. So if you don't know about holodeck, look it up. It is designed to do a nested virtualization environment of an entire VCF9 fleet and deployment. It is very, very cool. The hands-on lab it's different than how it was in the past, which is very cool. Instead of having mandatory click-throughs and environments, it's an actual instance that's spun up. So you can now request a hands-on lab, go in there, and then you'll be able to actually modify every single setting you have managed. You can crash an ESXi host. You can do all sorts of virtual things. So the new hands-on lab that Broadcom has done with VMware has been very, very impressive. These are some of the quickest wins that we've decided to go ahead and move over to VCF9. Some of those are basic, like Active Directory, the IPAM, the certificate. Make sure those are all up. Make sure those are all solid. I think everybody here probably knows how fancy and how picky VMware is about DNS, forwards and backwards. Sadly, that has not gotten any easier. So absolutely make sure that your DNS is set up correctly and that it's forward and backwards and the NTP is on point. Another quickest wins to get 9 up is definitely the I call it a concept of a golden bundle. So it's an ESXi image that we lock to certain firmware and driver versions, and that'll get you desired state config as well as drift notification. Drift notification is arguably, in my opinion, one of the most important things because if a VIP gets installed, if a malicious attacker gets access, if somebody changes from community supported security settings, it just alert you immediately, and then you can actually do things. There was a very cool cyber ESXi VIB that was shown earlier today too that did an absolutely phenomenal job, and it looks pretty cool, and that's something I'm going to be interested in too. Uh, Back on topic, the VCF installer is, as everybody know, that's converted over now from it's no longer the cloud builder, it'll convert itself, so that's kind of nice. You don't have this massive 38 gig VM floating around, this downloader just sitting there not really doing anything. So that is pretty cool. VCF operations, it's of my personal opinion that they kind of included a product that wasn't really doing too hot and then tossed it in there, which is good for us because now we get to use it. But at the same time, it is sort of different in comparison to regular VCF operations for logs. So you definitely have to make note of that. Check out the two. Keep in mind that they are different, and then go check them out. Other quick things, easy things is basic like template configs, template copies. Go ahead and get that set up. And then creating your first VI workload domain, same thing. You can use 2 hosts for principal storage, more so if necessary. And feel free to start moving your customers over, doing a few other subtenants, doing whatever the case may be, and just dip your toes in it, right? So you want to assign your workload domains as a function and tenant. And what is nice is the fleet-wide level of tags and VCF uh, let's see, storage policies. Sorry. So when you assign a storage policy and elsewhere, it no longer is at a single level. It can distribute out across the entire instance. So that is incredibly cool to be able to define something centrally now and have it be pushed out to multiple vCenters, because that's a function that previously we had to script around and do a whole lot of. From day one, make sure that you get everything pointing to logs. So logs are super duper important, and they are very, very nice to have. I'll go into a little bit of a demonstration about how I used VCF for logs just the other day to help uh, triage an issue. These are for the larger people or anybody that's doing hosted DR, anything of that nature. This is for the VMware cloud service providers and as part of the Broadcom shifts. So people that are curious about that. We are one of the few VCPs that are left, which is a VMware cloud service provider. If you are with a VCP now, make sure that you have a strategy going forward and that they have a named partner that they're working with on that. It's not taking place immediately. It's under license renewal, so it could be quite a few years out. There's no set time. They were able to extend their license out past 2027, so only by a little bit. So before then, make sure all that's good. The minimums and capabilities and the program tiers, they have different tiers. So we expect that there's Pinnacles being the highest. It is advantageous because that just shows like various things like sovereign data centers, partner competencies, et cetera, et cetera. So how to exist with a VCSP? I don't know, because of the limited time frame on this presentation, I wasn't sure about how to actually make this or go about it, but kind of wanted to talk about how we can keep customer intimacy as well as us still being the authorized VCSP so that we can supply VMware licensing and landing zone, and we can still have compliance within the Broadcom rules. So you will maintain all of the SLAs and agreements with the customers. There's some audits you have to do. There's DR first landing. That's kind of the best option to dip your toes in, get your feet wet. And then also is proof points, is making sure that you have discussed with your provider about what's being changed and what's going on. So the practical VCSP for enterprises. So run runs, license, and burst. That's kind of our motto about how exactly we're going through entitlements and how we're getting things kind of working and going from there. So the customer will own the governance. They'll identify, set up RBAC, the classes, and as well as the service level objectives and the DR targets. We will give the architecture roadmaps and app changes, such as going to 9.1, assist via CAB. We'll do cost governance for all of the showback and chargeback. We'll do all of the incident management. We have full escalation to Broadcom. We have a RapidStack, which is a data center in a box, which will handle all of the patching, the firmware. There's several different storage methods we can use. It's pure vSAN, whatever storage you're using, etc. Will help operate the NSX, and obviously we'll do the segmentation as well as everything that's under there, and we can send all the logs to your SOC as well as ours for the SIEM, and that will really help. It basically allows you to burst into our data center or your data center. This is kind of a new, not really a new technology, but it's a new technology in the fact that we are now completely trying to do this within the live recovery and the additional SKUs within VCF9 instead of the legacy products like Zerto and Veeam. This is another slide that talks about some of the VCSPs and the bring your own services. And basically the one really here to pay attention to is your FinOps. So make sure that all the dashboards are good, everything's kind of fine, and that you're able to prove and show back to your higher ups as well as the C-suites about which exactly we're trying to do, which is save money, really, as well as get everything in a nice, happy environment. You can stand up, do DR test and run books. That's what a lot of our larger private cloud customers are doing. That's kind of how we see it. The VCF9 has really taken a playbook out of that with live recovery. We're definitely trying to push them in the direction of taking live recovery a step further instead of just having it be with vSAN, but also with a whole bunch of VMFS and other NFS storage integrations, much like SRM was. We definitely want to offer the ability to bring things back in. I don't think this has really been touched on enough, but one of the things that I would be incredibly cognizant of and pay attention to is that the amount of heat as well as power that the newer gen CPUs are pushing. We currently have only some data centers still that are able to handle that higher 408 three-phase and get a whole lot of the virtual machines and the host density that we're having to require to see for a lot of those. So definitely empty your hydro racks first, and so you know that the electricity work is going well, and be prepared to have a significant cost increase for the power with a lot of this new VCF9, especially for those power hungry processors that are at 250, 300 watts plus per CPU. Okay, back to actual fun stuff with VCF9 and some of the automation quick wins. These are some of the things that I've really enjoyed doing, and they have been very fun with a lot of it. So, of course, if you're trying to upgrade to 9, make sure you go to images. You don't really have a choice. It's a prerequisite to be able to import and upgrade. So definitely pay attention to that. You can manage it from within VCF operations, which is super nice to be able to spread them across different fleets, and then, of course, regions and instances. One of the things that we're definitely experiencing some heartburn with is how to script that out and how to make that very possible. So if you can do it to start with, and then you can export it using your JSON declarative, it is incredibly helpful. And Definitely the first few times, I would say try and set up boot from SAN. It has been very nice to install different images and then reformat or go back to a snapshot on the SAN to do the exact same thing so that we can tweak the exact JSON deployment files to get it up and running to the point where we're able to deploy a customer environment within, I think we're down to like 12 hours now for the full VCF install, which is pretty dang good. Definitely, there's a very good book out there that is PowerShell in a Month of Lunches that's still applicable, even though it's significantly older. I think there was the latest version was as of last year, which is nice. JSON, JSON, JSON. Can't really talk about that enough. The ability to export and then re-import configs under the next run and next install has been a huge, huge step in the right direction and has been a very much wanted thing. Desired state and drift control is absolutely gone in the right direction. The ability to determine when something has changed, as simple as DNS or as complicated as a security setting was tweaked, has been milestones ahead of what we had before. So I'm really loving that. Centralized logging, same thing. So operations for logs for 9. It is a newer package. Of course, it's got a different GUI. There's been some performance enhancements as well as cluster scalabilities. So to be able to have an aggregation now of multiple instances and go through everything and increase the size is incredibly useful. It's been very, very nice to have a single pane of glass on where all of your logs are and to be able to actually go through and see everything. One of the things that we have really, really liked, I've really liked, is the concept of starting out with a greenfield management domain and then getting all these instances up and bringing in our legacy environments over. So at least getting everything under a single pane of glass in regards to area ops and log area for a log insight and having everything there really, really has been very beneficial from a performance troubleshooting point of view, as well as a proof of what has changed when. HCX being included has been very nice. We haven't played with that nearly as much as we should. We're starting to experiment with that in the lab, but the stretch layer 2 will allow for automation of failovers and failbacks, which is something we are very, very much looking forward to. These are some of the baselines that we've called out as incredibly important. And I want to talk about the SLO versus SLA for a second. So SLA is the service level agreement, and the SLO is the service level objective. So the service level objective is what we have, which is a higher standard than the SLA to a customer, for example. So one of the things that we want to be very aware of is the concept of percentages. So what is our median rate? What is our top 95% rate? What is our 99% rate for various things like latency and errors, as well as saturation points? With ops, and VCF9, we're able to get a little bit more performance, in-depth details about actually some of the more advanced metrics like the ready time and the co-stop. So that has been a welcome change to see. We definitely also keep aware of some of our vSAN clusters with the amount of resync time, the backfill and the capacity headroom. We are working on and debating trying to get some other things in there, such as RPL lags and various replication points, etc. So the standard fields to be able to put in there that we really wanted to see were kind of the environment. So by the way we design the fleet is not necessarily like a dev fleet and then a canary fleet and then a test fleet and then prod fleet. And so to have the environment tag in there and be able to actually see what exactly we are using to will allow us to filter and allow you to filter on the logs incredibly quickly. And in doing so, that will be a lot easier to do troubleshooting with, as well as give the correct views to different people that need it. The close turn host saturation, that is another good baseline and dashboard that's on there. So you're able to see exactly your density, the performance, the metrics, how your spread is. There's some other good ones you can do, especially with costing, depending on what you have. And you can go from there. And I think it looks like we've got people raise their hand. Let's see how to get there. Let's see. I don't see how to go there, so oh well. I think that'll be under the Q&A later, so you can just drop it in there and then we'll go from there. All right. Go back real fast. Sorry for that, guys. So definitely the there we are. Yeah. So the alert policies we want to do with the thresholds. So to be able to determine what exactly we're doing for how much we can burn and how often we cross over those alert thresholds. Come up with run books. That is a very good way. Area ops can be very chatty right out of the gate. So you want to make sure, or I'm sorry, VCF operations can be very chatty right out of the gate. So you want to make absolutely sure that you have enough uh, uh, headroom and run books to be able to properly empower your people so that you don't get alert fatigue right out of the gate. I'm going to try and wrap this up so that we can do a quick bio break beforehand, and also because there's another speaker I want to see. Okay, so future-proofing everything. Here's the whole point. Make sure that you're using a repo to share all the settings and those JSON specs with. If there's an export button, use it. Text is small. It is a lot easier than screenshots. And more importantly, we're seeing a trend with Broadcom to keep those at least semi coherent between version changes. So what works in one version seems like it will work in the next version. We do have until early next year for 9.1. Hopefully it won't be too much of a change. We will definitely see. Try and keep everything's standards and share all of the tools that you have available. I know that seems like a kind of a no-brainer, but we even in our own organization have an issue of not empowering our entire company and telling them that we have access to certain tools. So if it's nice, if there's run books and there's available, then make sure everybody in there kind of knows about them and that they're able to use it. Declarative, right? So use declarative statements now. I know it says UI snowflakes, but that is me. So I still like the UI a fair amount. But being able to actually handle something and say set as instead of change means that you can now set that entire object or every single object that is included within that whole vCenter or that whole fleet or that whole instance or that whole et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So being able to deploy something and use that with CLI is a lot easier and a lot more scalable than having to do it within the GUI. Golden images are absolutely amazing. I said I was going to use a login site example, but that's I just saw logs there, so I went off on that. API first where possible. VCF Power CLI was fully updated, fully supports 9.0. Make sure that you're using the latest version so you can get all the code, as well as a lot of the more helpful insights. Definitely do change annotations in all of your CAB boards. I know I am guilty of not necessarily putting in my reasoning behind certain CAB events. So I have been called out more than a few times with that. Make sure And you define an EVC mode because this is bitten us. It's bitten almost everybody, right? If it seems like common sense, but sometimes it gets dismissed in the excitement. Sometimes you have capacity changes. Sometimes you have to add a previous gen CPU. Sometimes you have to go forward. So it's really nice to just make sure that you set up the EVC mode. Uh, for tiering, a lot of people are doing data tiering as well now. So want to make sure that you have the SLOs in place for your latency, for your hot, your warm, your cold data, how far that gets, your different synchronization policies for async versus metro, how long you can go from there. Use VCF9 automation to be able to apply tags and groups and absolutely everywhere. So use automation to the point of being able to make it happen. I know we are coming up on time. Future improvement is make sure check out BYOS. I think that's a pretty cool thing that we definitely want to talk about. And then see it when you're actually renewing. So if you're moving to a VCSP, that you are within your right renewal period, so you're not double paying. That can be expensive. And make sure that you set up a review cadence so that you are able to review everything that you've done and everything that you have worked on. There is a whole lot of things that are going on in design and architecting, but more or less setting up for the future, the right way to do it will guarantee that we can continue down the 9.1 path and don't have to redo it. So we are doing, to reiterate, a greenfield for our management domain, and then breaking apart some of the VCF 5 instances and then importing those into the various components and going from there. And that's the summary. And there is a QR code where you can take a picture and submit it. And then those are my shoes that I got at VMworld as part of taking the VCF9 certification first. I will see where I can do some of the Q&A and we can go from there. Will the slide be a deck afterwards? Yeah, I've got to run it by marketing. I think I have to give it to them and then they'll scrub it and then we can go from there. But I don't see a problem with it. And then, yeah, oh yeah, brew, install, PowerShell, everything. So thank you all very much. We're running late, so I will give you 2 minutes back, and then I will see you all at the next session. Have a good one, everybody.